Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming to my presentation. The title of today's talk is Developing Community in Online TESOL Education Through Social Annotation. My major goal of this presentation is to share my personal experiences of teaching online social annotations. In this presentation, I will share many screenshots of what I have done in my own classes. And I welcome you to share your thoughts after my talk, and we can continue our discussion on this topic from there. So first, let's define the term social annotation. What do we mean by that? Nowadays, we're getting used to the idea of reading information online. And naturally, this leads to the idea of doing digital annotations. In the educational field, some of us are now expecting our students to do digital annotations on assigned class materials electronically. Social annotations are beyond the idea of individuals doing their own digital annotations. Instead, they allow students to share these annotations while interacting with the class community online. So in this regard, social annotations are a combination of digital annotations and social interactions. In another word, the participants of social annotations are not only interacting with a digital text online by sharing notes, but they're also interacting with each other, just like how they're doing with the social media. Using social annotations in teaching is informed by a social theory of learning established by Wenger in 1998. So here, community of practice is a social theory of learning. The traditional view of learning is an individual process that is a linear process and is separated from everything else students do in their lives. In contrast, community of practice considers learning as a social phenomenon and as a reflection of the social nature of human beings. The core belief of COP is that social participation leads to all learning activities and helps extract meaning and to build identities in human societies. There are 4 components of this theory, and they are meaning, practice, community, and identity. First of all, meaning is one major component of community of practice. Meaning is formed both individually and collectively through experiences. And practice is mutually engaged activity that is done by all participants in a community. And practice here is referring to learning by doing. The third component is community. The experience of social learning is also a way for the community members to indicate their group membership. And in this case, learning leads to belonging to a community. The last component is identity. Identity means that group members, through the social learning experience, reflect on their own identities and form new identities. And these identities, in turn, became the new context of the community. So to sum up here, the primary focus of a community of practice is on learning as a social participation. And social participation here is an encompassing process of being active participants in the practice of a social community and in constructing identities in relation to this community. In this presentation, I will use the constructs of the COP to explain students' participation in social annotations. Here's the outline of my talk. We will start off with an introduction to Perusall online platform. And the Perusall here is the social annotation website that I have used for students to do social annotations. And I will show you the interface of Perusall and go over how to get started with setting it up in your own online classes. I will then discuss some practical concerns from teachers' point of view by answering the following pedagogical question. How do teachers incorporate Perusall annotations in online course development? And after that, we will look at students' perspectives. I have 2 questions related to student perspectives. First of all, what do students do in Perusall annotations? And second, how do they perceive the usefulness of Perusall annotations? And finally, I would like to wrap up this presentation by discussing some additional teaching tips. Perusall is an online social annotation platform that I have used with my own students over the past few years. And this slide shows the homepage of the Perusall website. As an instructor, you can create an account in Perusall. There is a free account that you can use to explore and experiment on your own. And Perusall also works with major course management systems and has the option to be embedded in these systems. So for example, at Texas A&M Commerce, we use Desire to Learn or D2L for all of our online classes. And Perusall is smoothly embedded in all my D2L classes. So this means that students do not need to go through extra login process in order to access any reading material that we upload on the Perusall website. Here I am showing a get started page of Perusall that I borrowed from the Perusall website, and I include this passage in my online class module for the students. This introduction gives the students background information of Perusall, why they should consider using it, and how to use it. Using Perusall to annotate online is a very simple process, especially for most of our students who are familiar with reading text online and interacting via social media. So all they need to do is to highlight the text and type in the comment as an annotation. So that's pretty much the major task that they do in the Perusall website. And they can also respond to others' annotation in threads, just like how they're doing in social media, such as in Facebook. And they can upvote questions they find helpful. This introduction also lists a few tips for students to engage in good quality annotations. And there are several bulleted points here for students to go over, and they can see the expectations from the instructor on what means to be a quality annotation. So if you're a teacher who's interested to set up Perusall in your own online classes, here's what you need to do. So once you log into your Perusall account, either through the website or from your course management system, you will see a blue icon titled Get Started. All you need to do is to follow instructions on this page. And there's a Get Started instruction for instructors. And you can also maneuver to the right side here, which shows everything that you do as the settings of the Perusall platform in your course. Perusall offers multiple options when it comes to analytics. So here's a table on the right-hand side that you can see the different options. My recommendation for beginners is always use supplementary instruction. And this means that you do not want to enable the auto grading feature, which is a very fancy feature in this website. What I always do is to disable that feature, but still allow Perusall to provide student engagement analytics. So this simply means that you will grade whatever annotations the students have provided if you count that as the grading criterion. And you will allow the website to generate participation data. And I will show you some of those analytics in a minute, and you can see what are included as the participation points. So basically, this helps you to save some time to keep track of who did what by focusing on the content of the annotations. So you can actually engage with the students via this venue. This slide shows the Perusall teacher account interface in one of my recent online classes. For each week of class instruction, I upload supplementary readings to the Perusall platform for students to read and annotate. And this page shows the week 1 annotation assignment. There are several setting options on the teacher's page, as we can see here. It gives you an idea of the overall assignment progress in a nice pie chart with percentage of those who have already submitted their work and those who have not. This overview page also gives the teacher information on the total number of comments, total number of questions, as well as unanswered questions on the assigned reading. And it presents the most upvoted annotations. And it even gives you a list of most active students and the least active students. So as a teacher, I can pretty much use this information as a way to assess the overall participation of all my students in this practice via Perusall. In addition to the overview page, Perusall also provides a nice table of analytics for each student participation. And this presents the specifics regarding students. For example, their total viewing time of the assigned reading, their active engagement time, the number of annotation posted, the number of response they have posted, the number of upvotes students give, as well as the number of upvotes they receive from others. So you can use this table as the teacher to assess students' participation in a social annotation practice. Here I am showing the Perusall annotation interface, which gives you an idea on how it looks like while students are engaging in the practice. On the left column is a page of an article being assigned to students. And if you're looking at the highlight, the purple highlight is the first one that is done by the first student. The acronym here is AE. This corresponds to the first annotation comment by AE on the right side. And the next highlight, which is yellow, the yellow highlight is done by another student, GJ, and the corresponding comment is the second one on the right-hand side. So by clicking on the different highlight, it leads you to the corresponding comment. And the third initial, DC, is my own, which, because this is taken from my Perusall account, so it shows my initial there. And the students will see a similar text box in their own Perusall account, which allows them to input a comment on the highlighted portion of the text. So the text box is just like a standard text box in most Web 2.0 tools, which is multimodal. So you can embed a picture, for example, you can embed an audio or even a video. And here on the right-hand side, I also circled in red the green check mark, which is a feature, interaction feature in Perusall website that allows you to upvote other people's annotation comment. So this is just like the like button or the heart button in some other social media websites. And in both comments here, we can also see that students have tagged others using the @ sign, the @ symbol following by other students' names. So this is also similar to social media postings and shows the social interactions within the community of practice. On this slide, I'm showing the student account interface on Perusall. In contrast to the teacher's account, student account has fewer features, and the most important task, which stands out, is highlighted in green. So it shows work on assignment. Throughout the 2 years I've used this website, very few students ever had issues with accessing the annotation assignment. And they know exactly what to do right after the beginning. And this shows that it's a very simple and straightforward setup for students. Even for those who are not familiar with this platform, typically they don't really have a problem as long as they can go in and look at the page. So in this presentation, for the purpose of this presentation, I have gained permission from 5 of my past students to share their experiences of doing social annotations via Perusall. And they have agreed to share their annotations as well as their reflections on the experiences of using this website. They have all done an internet survey and as well as a follow-up interview. This table lists the background information of all my participants, including their age, teaching experience, current position, the online TESOL courses in which they have done the social annotation, as well as the time when they took the course. All participants here had teaching experiences, with some having more experiences than others. And all of them are currently in a teaching or teaching-related position. And the data that I present in this talk came from 3 different courses in the past 3 semesters. And there are TESOL methods, teaching teachers online, which is one of the electives that I taught, and language and culture in classroom. And all 3 courses are free, fully online courses, and they are delivered asynchronously. So which means that we don't hold synchronous meetings with the students. This table here shows the Perusall analytics of my 5 participants. As Perusall annotations are optional tasks in all my classes, some students chose to do more annotations than others. The first participant, for example, here, AG, she had more annotated assignments because she was enrolled in 2 of my courses, and she did annotations in both. If we look at the column of average active reading time in minutes, we can see that there's a quite range. For example, while one of the students, SB, spent as much as 87 minutes per assignment actively engaged in social annotations, the other student, PG, only spent as little as 17.6 minutes. So I was actually puzzled by this analytics until I interviewed both participants, and I find out that some participants like PG actually read and annotated the article in print. So what she did is she went into Perusall, download the article and print them out, read it, annotated in print, and then went back to the Perusall website and entered the comments. This is certainly not a typical practice, and it's not recommended. However, students do that. So it's something to be aware of, and that tells us that we cannot just judge the students' engagement by looking at active reading time. The analytics results also show that although participants all posted their comments and responses in Perusall, they rarely give upvotes to others' annotations. So if we're looking at the average number of upvotes give, it's very little. Their average number of upvotes received is a bit higher in number. And I know the reason why as their instructor, because I actually went into Perusall and I read all their comments. I give lots of upvotes. So it helps to bring up the average number. But the lesson here is that because giving upvotes is not a grading criteria that I use to assess students' participation, most students did not care to upvote others' annotations. And after all, this is optional assignments for them. So they went and did annotation, which they thought pretty good about it, and they did not really pay too much attention to others' annotations. At the beginning of the semester, I designed the first type of annotation assignment, which is a guided assignment. This means that as the instructor, I went into the assigned article and did my annotation by adding highlights and questions for students to respond to. And this helps to see patients look like and what sort of questions they can reflect in their own annotation assignments. For example, this is one of the articles that I assigned in my TESOL methods class. I highlighted a quote, which is a criticism of the CLT approach. And I asked the students to share their own experiences to resistance to CLT while teaching overseas, because we have a lot of student teachers who had experiences teaching overseas. As you can see here, one of my participants, AG, shared her experience of resistance to CLT by her students from the former Soviet countries. AG later mentioned in her interview that she enjoyed the guidance questions from me because it's easier for her to see what was expected from the instructor on reading comprehensions. Another type of annotation that is more commonly used in my Perusall classes is unguided annotation. And this means that students freely select whatever content within the assigned article that they like to comment on. In this example that I'm showing here, one student, an age, highlighted a quote from an article regarding material development. And she raised a question in her annotation. Another student, AB, so this is the second one in the thread, AB voted for another student, SB, to answer this question. As we can see from AB's comment, at so-and-so, so the student's name that she's voting to answer this question, this is an excellent question for you, and smiley face. And then SB follows up by posting her response, which is a very lengthy one that you see on the right side of the screen. This is a response to the question, and she shared her experiences as an academic designer because she has lots of experience when it comes to ESL textbook publishing. So these interactions from the three students were all unguided by the instructor. Students all by themselves initiated their own questions, voted for other person to respond, and they shared their personal or professional experiences pertaining to the question raised. Earlier, I presented a window of community practice, just a quick refreshment of the memory. This model has 4 components, meaning, which refers to learning as experience, practice, which is learning as doing, community, which is learning as belonging, and identity, which is learning as becoming. I will now use this model to try to explain the social annotation practice done by the participating students in my classes. And the goal here is for you to see how Perusall annotation has started to show as a social learning experience for them, and how we can improve from there to make it a better educational experiences for our online students. The first COP component that we can identify from social annotation is how students use it as a learning experience to form meaning to their own class community. This is very commonly all participants in my. They bring new content to the online collaborative reading experience by sharing additional resources and personal experiences. The content is meaningful and adds to the collective knowledge of the entire online community. So for example, I uploaded an instructional video on content-based instruction in my TESOL methods class for students to watch and annotate in Perusall. And one of my participants, SB, reflected on this video by discussing her opinions of it. And she recognized the distinction between students who had strong academic base in their L1 versus those who don't. Annotation, she also presented her own experiences of attending a workshop from CUNY and what she had learned from that workshop in terms of assessing students that strive to separate out the content from the language for new immigrants. So all of these experiences are new, and they are new content, and they add to the collaborative knowledge base of the entire class community. And the fact that it is documented in writing in the Perusall platform makes it even more memorable, because this means as every class member can trace back to the same comment when they need to read it again. So it's documented in writing in that way. And the annotation shared by the students adds to the new meaning to the class content. Quotations from the internet survey filled out by my participants also reflect the same component in COP, with meaning being formed through learning experience. For example, one person stated, "I do like it when someone answers a question with accurate information." And another one wrote, "It was interesting to see what classmates thought were significant ideas in the article. Sometimes they focused on a concept that I had missed or hadn't really thought much about." Both comments listed here showed that students used the Perusall annotations as a way to experience new content constructed by the other class members, and they all benefited from the active social learning experience. The second component of COP is practice, and this is also reflected in the social annotations by my participants. For example, one of the theory that we have talked about TESOL methods is Bloom's taxonomy. And in their annotations, students practiced by themselves how to use Bloom's taxonomy. And they have brainstormed their own teaching activities, and they have analyzed their activities with this theory. So like the comment that I'm showing here from AG, she has, in her annotation, she has stated her idea on how to use the assigned reading. So here on the left-hand side is the reading that I assigned them to do, which is a very complex chart related to Bloom's taxonomy. So she used this chart and she thought of scaffolding activities for her own students. And she also presented her own brainstorming on what some sample activities would look like. So this type of practice also adds to the meaning of the class content so that it is connected to the first component. And it's a nice way for students to practice and document their practice of how to apply a given theory. The third component, which is also reflected in students' social annotation, is community. The sense of belonging is communicated via social media tools such as upvoting and tagging. For example, in one of the texts assigned in the language and culture class, one participant, DS, highlighted a quote describing the rhetorical pattern of a standard American academic prose. And she voiced her concern regarding the importance of knowledge of contrastive rhetoric. And in its comment, DS reflected on her heritage as a Black person. She tagged another classmate who commented on the same quote, and she even earned one upvote from another classmate who appreciated her comment. As I mentioned earlier, since tagging and upvoting are not really required for students to earn their participation points in Perusall, only a few of students actually engage in these activities. But DS is among the few students who have actually frequently done tagging and upvoting others. And in my interview with her, she told me that she cherished the opportunities to socially engage with other students. And seeing them comment on the same quote as what she has selected makes her feel excited and happy that they all belong in the same group. She also commented that she learned a lot from doing this type of social annotations while connecting with other classmates who are not in the same physical location. And she found the annotations useful in constructing her final project in the same class. Participant comments in the internet survey also reflected the same component community. So here I have a couple quotes from participants. One person stated, "I like the interactive instruction between classmates and the instructor." And the other said, "I like that I could see that some of the things that I picked out as pertinent or interesting was mirrored in some of my classmates' comments." Later in my interviews with the participants, they all mentioned about a sense of belonging, the sense of social belonging and social presence as a strong affordance of Perusall. The last COP component reflected in social annotations is identity. Participants form their own identity as TESOL educators by reflecting on or envisioning their own teaching practices in specific contexts. For example, one text that I assign my students to read is on the topic of cultural discontinuity. And one participant highlighted passage defining the term cultural discontinuity, which occurs when teachers invalidate, personalize, or directly punish students who are cultural specific language characteristics of their home environment to communicate in the school settings. ES then related to this quote by posting an annotation. Started off with a question. Can anyone imagine how many times in the school year cultural discontinuity happens, even given teachers the benefit of the doubt? She then shared in the annotation how she reacted to her own ESL students' oral presentations and how her encouragement and understanding of them using their first language has made a difference on the students' confidence to participate. Through this annotation, she's articulating her own identity, which is against the practice of cultural discontinuity that is being discussed in the assigned article. So to sum up, it's great to see that students take a further step to not only reflect on the article, their personal experiences, but also seeing through these experiences and reflect on their individual role or collective role as language educators. Now that we have looked at some annotation examples, I would also like to share students' opinions on their likes and dislikes regarding Perusall annotations. So just a little note, the plus sign on this page indicates that this is a feature that is liked by the students, and the minus sign indicates a feature that is disliked. For example, a participant mentioned that she likes the fact that Perusall annotation are contextualized comments. She stated in her survey report that I preferred using Perusall to posting chats on D2L. It's helpful to see all the comments together in the context of the content they relate to. And I like being able to go back and locate prior readings and comments using Perusall, where on D2L you have to search to remember which unit each reading is located and then scroll around to try find comments. The same feature, however, is dispreferred by another participant, criticizing the comment in Perusall are too local or too specified. She said, Perusall should be structured in such a way that it necessitates some level of detailed engagement with the information. So students will be expected to study the text thoroughly rather than skim or scan it. So to me, as the course instructor, it is definitely helpful to see both perspectives when it comes to the specific format of social annotations that are done in Perusall. In order to have more students benefit from doing contextual comments, the instructor has to put more effort into designing the annotation assignment. And what comes after the annotation assignment is also crucial. For example, having a follow-up assignment like a response paper that is mandatory and it's part of the grade for the course that requires students to use annotations from the reading. This would be definitely helpful because then it encourages more thorough reading of the assigned materials. And likewise, students can be asked to do a summary discussion post on what they have learned from reading the social annotations being posted in Perusall. The participants also shared their perceptions regarding how they like the interactive features in Perusall. Some of them enjoyed the interactiveness of the social annotation tool, and while others commented on the technological difficulties they have experienced and how the type of online social interaction doesn't feel like a real interaction. The same person here also stated, I am not from the generation where everything is online. I dislike having to read online, and now to add comments to the online text is just not my style. These perceptions caution us as instructors when we're designing assignments using an external technological tool like Perusall. We need to acknowledge that not everyone will like the idea of learning to use a new tool. And a natural interactive task for one person could be a hassle or challenge for another person. To conclude my presentation, I'd like to share a few teaching tips using Perusall annotation. First of all, if it's your first time using a social annotation tool like Perusall, my recommendation is to experiment small and make it optional at first. This is to ensure that you do not run into students who are strongly against learning another new tool on top of learning everything else in your class. But it also gives everyone a chance to experience it and see if they like to use it in the future. And second, as teachers, we are the designer of all of our class assignments. So it is worthwhile to spend some time getting familiar with all the settings on Perusall. During the first semester when I use it, I wasn't aware that I can change the setting to make all readings that I upload in Perusall ready to download for students. So when one of my students asked me if they can download the readings, I went and studied the settings again and find out that there's actually a checkbox for me to click, and then that will enable the feature. So the takeaway point is we need to know the settings that we use in order to use it to educate our students. And my third tip here is to read and interact with the students in Perusall. From the very beginning, I stepped in as one of them, and I tried out all the features myself. Until this day, I still go in and read every annotation comment my students wrote. I upvoted their annotations, I answered their questions, I replied to their comments, and I tag them in replies. I view this tool as a useful venue to communicate and connect with my students because I don't get to see any of them face-to-face or synchronously in this type of fully online classes. And also, it's necessary to include a class demonstration video on how to get started with Perusall. I made my own demo video and shared it with my students during the first week. It helps to streamline the process and address any questions or concerns before they even started to use this tool. Last but not least, as I mentioned earlier, for a social annotation tool to reach its maximum effect, it's necessary to design follow-up assignments based on social annotations. For example, reading response discussion posts or response papers. And this is all. I hope you enjoy this presentation, and I'd be happy to address any questions. Thank you. Okay, I see some questions in chat. Hi, John. I'm reading your comment. Did you note any difference in student interaction between the guided and unguided annotations? Did you notice if they were more interactive or had different interactions in situations where they had agency to choose what to comment on? I'm still in the process of analyzing everything. I want to say that it's not really a big difference in terms of what people do, but it definitely, I think the guided annotation restricted their thought pattern. And that's part of, my initial considerations of doing both at different time period. I tried out the guided annotations at the beginning, and I stopped doing that at around midterm, just to give everyone a sense of what they can do. So almost like a demonstration on my own behalf. And students still do the thread style. They would answer my question, and some other students would respond to other students who have addressed my question. So they're not really directly interacting with me. A lot of times they're interacting with each other. And when they're doing the unguided, obviously they're picking their own content that they wanted to address. And I'm also one of the participants. So sometimes if I see an interesting comment, I would chime in and participate. So I view this as the same thing as what we do in a face-to-face lecture, really. Like a seminar class. Sometimes we would ask our students a question and students would answer them. They would address your question, and some students will add additional comments to other people's response. And, the unguided would be, we ask the students, hey, do you guys have any questions? And then one student would ask a question, right? And the instructor would ask the whole class, hey, what do everybody think about this question? And then you will see other people responding to the question, and the instructor would give a summary comment or some sort of comment at the end. I'm not sure if I have addressed your question, but I certainly see that the starting point is different. However, the interaction pattern is somewhat similar between these two. Yes, thank you, Katie, for your comments. And I certainly feel that there's a lot of improvement that I can do in my own teaching practice. And this is almost like a action research project that I try to address. The initial motivation is I wanted to engage students more in their reading practice, because I was always worried that they did not do their reading thoroughly. And then seeing all the annotations makes me feel like, students are really thinking, and there's a lot of new content being contributed to the course development. A lot of my students have teaching experiences in all different contexts. A lot of them are working overseas, and many of them are K-12 public school teachers. So they all teaching in different contexts, and just sharing that experience is fascinating in the online community. And that's not something the textbook offers. Not a single textbook can offer that rich experience for everybody. But it certainly we can do more in kind of making students accountable in terms of designing more follow-up assignment to really utilize the social annotations in their formal writing assignments.
I feel like it's an evergreen problem of how do you keep students accountable to the readings. And I've tried so many things over the years to try to, and I feel like that it's a constant, revision. But I really like how you were bringing those two things together in this one technology. So thank you for sharing.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, so another question. In your experience, does using Perusall increase involvement with the readings over compared to an open discussion? This is an excellent question. Certainly, yes. And I've seen it pops up in teaching evaluations all the time that students appreciate doing it. Whenever I'm making it optional. In one of my classes, I think I try to make it a required assignment, and that's when the criticism come in, because some people doesn't really prefer to do it, and they would like to be offered options. So nowadays, what I do is I do options. You can either do Perusall annotation or D2L, and students would happily choose whichever they like to do. And surprisingly, a lot of them do both, even it's not a requirement for them to do both. And they still like to engage in that interaction with each other and just read what other people have written. I think that helps them to construct their discussion post. And I see a lot of discussion posts were actually based on what they have read from the annotations. All right, thank you for all the wonderful comments and questions. I think we're almost running out of time. So I have the reference to my talk here, and Amanda Grant asked me to put this little thing here. So you can ask her about our fully online PhD and MA program. And we have just started our fully online PhD program in applied linguistics. If you have any questions, you can find her from the exhibitor showcase. Thank you very much.